Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and I just wanted to do a really quick follow-up review of Total War Three Kingdoms with the Yellow Turbans, because I hadn't really played the Yellow Turbans or done much with them when I wrote my initial Total War Three Kingdoms review. And keep this in mind as well. I think some people got confused about this when they're reading the Three Kingdoms review. I'm talking about it mostly specifically, is this good for me as a content creator on YouTube? Is this a good game that I enjoy playing, and is this a good game that I think I can make good content for? Okay, so once again, as I said several times in that video, a lot of people will still like this game, even if it's not good for you. You know, I try to give you as much information as possible. Make your own choices, make your own decisions. If you disagree, if you like to play it, that's fine. I actually do like the Yellow Turbans quite a lot, and I'm going to talk about why in this video, but I just want to throw that out there. So I think some people think that, you know, if someone necessarily writes a review that's mixed, then they're saying that it's going to be mixed for everybody, or that it's going to be negative for everybody. That's not true. There are different types of players. I mean, some people like to chill and just sit there and do diplomacy and level up their towns over hundreds of turns, and that's fine. I like something that is a lot more action-packed, and has a much faster rate of progression. And that was one of my major critiques in my initial review, and particularly, now remember, I also said this, that was mostly flavored by Bandit Queen, because I wanted to play something that was really up-tempo and something that was really challenging in the Bandit Queen. And as I said in that video, there were a lot of imbalances and pacing issues that made the game a lot more frustrating than it should have been. I think a lot of that actually gets fixed with the Yellow Turban, so let's go ahead and get in here and talk about why. Okay, first up, there's a much smoother progression. Now this is turn like 92, and I am going to release this campaign as well. I'm going to start releasing episodes today. I don't know how many I have. This is probably like 15 or 20 episodes deep, but I like the pacing of this a lot more. You know, it's turn 92. I'm getting very advanced. You know, probably within the next 25 turns or so, I should have reached Enlightenment here. And then ideally, I don't know how long it's going to take to close these guys out, but I should be able to do it within 150 to 200 turns, you know, tops. Versus in the Bandit Queen campaign, I was super aggressive the entire time, taking all kinds of towns, just as aggressive as I am with Yellow Turbans here. Now, I didn't have the same, you know, surface area here for reasons that we'll talk about in a little bit. But, you know, I had a decent little chunk of stuff, you know, over here by turn like 30 or 35, so a third of the turns. But I had not even progressed past the first rank. I got this first rank so quickly in the campaign, and I've able to ascend quite a lot. So that was my big issue with that, is you aren't rewarded enough with Bandit Queen for being aggressive. That infamy mechanic takes way too long. You only get like 3 infamy from looting and occupying towns, and using that loot and occupy does give you money. You have to do it because your early money towns are terrible with Bandit Queen, but at the same time, you need to get your towns up to tier 4 so that you can actually get the prestige for your win condition. So it was tension, but it was tension in a really bad way, that you were basically forced to get the money to loot and occupy, to get the infamy, and it just didn't pay off as much. It was competing systems that were conflicting instead of systems that were interesting strategic choices. However, the Enlightenment system and each faction might have a different kind of currency for that. From what I understand, most of the base factions, there's prestige. You have to try to get to level 4 or higher, and you get prestige in your main town. They might have some buildings that can also give prestige, but mostly it's from leveling up your main settlement towns and acquiring the secondary resources. I think these gave you 5, you know, for horses or silk or whatever. Then you'd get 13 when your main town was level 4, and so on and so forth. How the Enlightenment mechanic works is there are several ways you can get to Enlightenment, all of which are by doing usually fairly aggressive things, and I like that. So the number one way you can get Enlightenment is you actually build buildings that give you Enlightenment. I don't think this happened for Bandit Queen. I think that your specialty building was... Now, he has a different specialty building as well, but I think you had to just level up your main settlement. So your main settlement does not give you Enlightenment, but you can build certain buildings that do. So this is one, the Scholar's Lodge, which is amazing. It can give you up to 15 Enlightenment and 15% faction-wide research, which is really, really strong, because research also gives you enlightenment. So as you finish up your techs here in this tech tree, which we'll talk about in a second, you also get a certain amount of enlightenment, as you can see off to the right. So as you're gaining territory, as you're gaining property, you're able to get enlightenment out of an investment in these buildings, and then off of not only getting your main win condition, you're also catalyzing, you're sort of getting multiplicatively stronger because you're getting faster research rate, which gives you even more enlightenment, which also allows you to power up a little bit faster. And you get to choose, you know, the kind of power-ups that you want here. You get to get cool build-it or get cool units, and you can kind of skip around and find the ones that you want. They have a much better identity. Once again, we'll talk about tech in a second. I just want to focus on enlightenment here, but that's really cool. And you can get a secondary building as well that gives you even more enlightenment. Now, this one gives you public order, income from all sources in this town, and extra enlightenment. So I think that's really cool that you have to make strategic choices. Once again, that's what I'm all about, good strategic choices. So the main building doesn't give it to you, but there's this tension now. Okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to get, you have to have a farmstead because you have to be able to afford the food off of the town. So there's not really a choice there. Unless you have a fishing port, you're going to have to get a farm. Some way to get food to support the town. But then you have choices, right? These are real choices you can make. That are interesting. So yes, they do have the money buildings. These are much more cost efficient too. That's something that I was talking about a lot in my previous review, and that was true of the Bandit Queen, but this is much more affordable. It's only 475 gold, and you get 100 income apiece. That is much, much better. Bandit Queen is 1,300 gold for like the same equivalent town. It's ridiculous. It's not efficient at all. Even this, like the tier 2 is pretty efficient, you know, 700 for another 100. Even here at the 1,000, you know, for another 100, that's good. Now it does start to get a little wacky at tier 4 and 5, but that's to be expected. You know, like the super high end stuff should be inefficient, but the tier 1, 2, and 3 should all be fairly efficient. Now the trade-off is you have to have a town to level 4 before you can build this building. Okay. So you can't build them early. Yes, Bandit Queen can build them early, but she's, you know, she's supposed to be going around doing aggressive stuff, and she's not going to be able to protect those towns early on. And that is a major thing as well, is that you can build, I think the garrison building still requires tier 4. Let me double check up here in this one. Yeah, the garrison building still requires tier 4, so that is a thing, but there are other like early game military buildings that are really useful. Like this gives you money, extra income from industry, and replenishment. Replenishment is a huge thing in this game. That was one of the major things that I complained about a lot in the review, is it just takes forever to muster. You have to sit there for, you know, 6 or 7 turns to get replenishment, you know, if you want your army to be full strength. And that just totally derails the momentum in the campaign, especially for someone who's supposed to be as aggressive as the Bandit Queen is, right? You're supposed to be going out, taking a bunch of stuff. She should have something where, like, you get replenishment when you take a town. I think Yuan Shao has something like that. That was just something that was kind of frustrating with that campaign. But now you can invest early on in this property and not feel terrible about it, because it's only 1,000 gold, so it's still a little steep, but it still pays, you know, 88 gold by itself, 80 plus the 10%. You get military supplies, which doesn't always matter, but sometimes does. And then 10% replenishment. You can get this in a tier 1 town if you want to. So this can help you, you know, replenish, get a little bit of cash, and move on faster to go take more territory. Perfect for a really aggressive faction like the Yellow Turbans, or like, should be, like someone like the Bandit Queen. So this is much, much better. It gives you access to much more replenishment early on. So not only can you get that for replenishment, but there are certain skills and talents that you can get, which also give you some replenishment. So like right here, Fanaticism gives you 10% or 5% replenishment for your whole army. You don't see that all the time. I don't even know if they had anything like that with the Bandit Queen campaign. Then you can also get some technologies that give you extra replenishment. Now they are a little bit later down the line. I'm trying to remember which one it is. Yeah, that gives you 10% replenishment. Now, you could get replenishment as well, you know, with some technologies with the Bandit Queen, but you don't get there as quickly because you don't have a huge research rate like you get with the Yellow Turbans. So you can't get up there and get access to that as fast. And then you have an assignment that you can do that allows replenishment. Now, you might, like 15% extra replenishment. So you can very easily, right now, I'm getting like 30% replenishment in most armies without even building that extra building. And if I build that building, I can get 40% replenishment. And there's some other stuff you can do to get extra mustering turns, which is basically new replenishment when you get new troops. So you replenish super fast on your units now. And that means that you're not sitting around waiting. You're not just chilling. You're able to be aggressive, make more moves, progress the map, progress the game state, not just go AFK and watch Netflix for 5 turns and spam the end turn button. That was one of my biggest critiques of the base campaign, at least with Bandit Queen. Once again, other factions might have some special stuff that give you more replenishment, but I understand that they want to slow down the snowball and the steamrolling, like I was talking about in that review. Like, I get what they're doing. They want the game to be slower and a little more methodical, but it's just, for me personally, as a content creator and then also as a player, I don't want to sit there and just press the end turn button for 5 turns and wait on stuff. That's just, I don't like to play the game that way. I like to be doing something active every turn. So that for me is a huge perk. So the techs are really good. Your general levels. Now this is something they could have also done with Bandit Queen, and they might do with other factions, I'm not sure. But actually leveling up your generals gives you a small amount of progression towards your overall win condition. So you get 2 extra enlightenment every time you level up your generals. So you're highly encouraged to get these generals to high levels. You're going to do that anyways, but it's just kind of a feels good. It's like, okay, you know, I've got a bunch of generals. We've lasted a lot of fights. They haven't died. You know, I'm playing the game right. So not only are they more powerful, but I'm also, you know, working towards that win condition, which is really nice. So I think that would have been good to pick up for some of the other factions as well. Once again, if they don't have it, I haven't played every faction, but just in the couple that I looked at, that's a really nice touch to encourage you to try to level up a bunch of different generals and to try to keep them all alive. I think that's really nice. There's also, I think personally, the skills are a lot more interesting and they're a lot more diverse, and that goes to kind of general diversity, which I think was one of my other major points. There are 3 different kinds of generals when you're doing Yellow Turban. You have veterans, who are like your green ones in the normal campaign, at least with Bandit Queen. And they're still the most powerful, usually. But some of the other ones are actually pretty nice, and they can actually fight to an okay extent. Now, you have some good stuff spread amongst a bunch of your different generals as well, which are really handy, kind of like almost hybrid type of skills that go through a bunch of them so that they can all be useful, right? Like, this is another thing that I harped on a lot in the review, primarily based on Bandit Queen, was that some generals were very good. Veterans were extremely strong. They were, you know, the red ones were okay at fighting as well, but it was really those green veterans were going to be your strongest generals, and there were several skills they had that were unique to them that no one else could get. And then the blue generals were terrible. They cannot fight. They get completely obliterated in battle. So you literally just sit in AFK, pretty much, if you're being smart, with your blue general because you don't want him to die or just randomly get sniped by an arrow. But they had skills that you really needed. So they had all of the archery bonus skills, and archers are the most OP units in the game. And they had night fights. And I think that was the only way you could get night fighting, or at least it was the only popular way to get night fighting. And night fighting is extremely powerful, not only because you can isolate blobs of enemy units. You can have like one general potentially able to fight down 2 other generals. But also it gives -10 morale to the enemy whenever you fight at night, which is massive because a lot of those entry-level units are only going to have like 30, 35 morale. The AI gets a lot more. They get bonus stats on Legendary. I'm not sure exactly what all those stats are offhand, but morale is almost always one of them. I know in Total War Warhammer, they get +8 morale. So being able to negate that a little bit, bring down those stats with a night fight is very good. So this guy is a good fighter. But the thing is, you know, it's modular, right? There's a lot of stuff, and there is, it feels like there is a bit more variation in the skills. Some units really have a different skill set than others, even within the same class. Like, different veterans will have slightly different skills, different healers will have different skills. But it feels like there's almost always something good, right? And so this veteran, yeah, you can get some range stuff with the veteran. So we've got campaign movement range here. Got armor piercing, replenishment here, extra armor there, post-battle loot, extra range damage and melee damage there, range damage here, extra range stuff here. So it just means, and fatigue resistance here, so there's a lot of good stuff. And yes, some types of units specialize in different things a little bit better than others. So most of the veterans will usually have stuff that's a little bit better for like armor, for your spear type of units, just like they did with Bandit Queen, but you also get some of this stuff. And then you've got your healers over here, which will have some similar skill sets, right? We've got the armor here, but they have this tranquility, which can heal you up over time if you stay out of combat. There's the fanaticism and opportunism. So I can still get these two powerhouse abilities if I really want those. But they also have things like research rate here, which is great if you want to assign them as governor somewhere, or if you want to assign them as like put them on assignments or whatever for replenishment, which is something very strong they can do that's unique. They can get that replenishment thing to sit in a town and give 15% replenishment to all generals in the area. So that's good. So they have that utility, but they also have some other things in here too that make them useful. Now you'll notice they don't have as much about the arrows though with this one. It's okay, but it's usually the scholars that are going to have some of the arrow stuff, right? So they've got the precision over here. They've got opportunism. They have focus. They still have arrow stuff, but they have other stuff that's useful too. You know, they have some insight over here. They have like some encourage. They have fatigue resistance. So it just feels like all of the generals are kind of useful. Like they're a bit more homogenized. They're still somewhat specialized, but you can mix and match units a little bit more. And this is something that, and the tech tree also encourages this as well. So if we go over here and look at this tech tree again, under reforms, you know, some of them have specialty units, like these guys, the scholars will end up getting like some of the best archers in the game, the archery masters that are really good. They can also get some pretty good swords with the scholar warriors, and early on they have some pretty good melee on melee units with this militia of virtue, and they have kind of like some unique units like these with poison blades, so that's cool. And then your veteran people end up getting these like really good halberds, but they also have the options to get some spears and horses. Mounted archers there that are cool. They got some horses over here. They got crossbows over here. So like it feels like each general has the option to be a bit more modular, because sometimes, and this happened a little bit in the Bandit Queen campaign, you just can't get the perfect setup of generals that you want, either because some generals just don't get along well together. There just aren't a lot in your pool to consider. Or they just don't have a lot of happiness, or there's just something going on where you just can't get the perfect setup, right? Like the perfect setup with Bandit Queen is 2 greens and a blue, right? Or like, sorry, 1 green and 2 blues, right? Somebody that can get the spears, the veterans, and then just spam archers with the blue, get all the upgrades, and just delete everybody. Well, you can't do that all the time. So early on, I was running 3, excuse me, 3 veterans for a while there. But then I needed more veterans for these secondary armies, and I just was not getting good quality veterans, so I had to start working with healers. And I figured out they actually have some pretty decent stuff. Like, these are some pretty cool units here, some hybrid units, these Bringers of Righteousness. And so it feels like all of them are pretty viable in different circumstances, and they all feel like they're unique, but they're also modular to an extent. Like the healers, they all have their own sort of marquee units, like their specialty units that are like, wow, that's really powerful. Like the healers get these guys in the mid game. These Bringers of Righteousness are very good. You get the Keepers of the Land or whatever, Guardians of the Land with veterans, and these guys are extremely strong. These Men of the Forest, sort of hybrid archer axe units that are really cool. I find the purple ones, the scholars, are probably the least powerful early on without getting more upgrades in them. But I think that later in the game, the archery masters will be really strong. So the person who's best with the archers, the purple one, is actually, I think, the least powerful ward, which is really cool because archers are the most powerful unit. So that's really neat that, like, late game, I can get those powerful archers, but early game, I don't feel like I have to have them. I can just go with, like, veterans and these Men of the Forest in the early to mid game and still be very useful. So I think there are more viable, like, different strategies you can do with the generals. Their skills feel a little bit better. They can all fight. I mean, there's no one that's, like, completely worthless. You know, she's not great in fight. Healers, as you would suspect, they probably aren't. But she's got a little bit of armor. You know, she does 60 armor-piercing damage. Like, she's okay. She can kind of fight. She's got 56,000 health. It's all right. And this is records mode, legendary. Yeah, he's stronger. You know, he's got 69,000 health. He's, you know, attacking a little bit faster, has a bigger charge bonus, has some better armor-piercing damage. But he's not in a completely different universe from her as far as damage goes, right? Like, he's decidedly better, but she can still do stuff. It felt like in the campaign with the Bandit Queen that the yellow and the blue generals were just awful. Like, they just could not even get close. Like, the blue general had something like 10,000 health. Not that low, but like 20,000 health. I mean, look at these clowns. Let's see. Well, it's not going to show us because we're not close enough to get to know them right now, but I guess we can see their military, but it's not showing us their stats. But yeah, they are just like so frail, it's laughable. There's no way you can put them on the battlefield, so you just AFK with them. You can actually attack with the healers. You know, you can attack with the scholars. I think that's really cool. So they're not as good, but they're not completely worthless either. So I think that's really nice. And I think I talked about the buildings, but I just want to highlight again that these buildings there are actual choices with the buildings. You don't just burn them and just go for prestige and then drop a, you know, a military building, a money building, and a food building there. Like, there is actual tension, you know. Do you go greedy? So, like, I've been greedy a lot in this campaign so far, and I've gone for a ton of Enlightenment buildings. You pretty much have to get this one, Enlightenment plus research. That's just too good to pass up. But this little one here, this one's a little more questionable. You know, it's cheap to get it, but it only gives public order, which is usually really good anyways with the Yellow Turbans after a while. A lot of text and stuff you can get to help you out with that. But then the income from all sources, not that great. That's only 50 income. It's okay, you know, in a really rich town. If you were powering up to like a level 10 town, yeah, it'd be a little bit better, but you do get 5 enlightenment off of it. So then the question becomes, okay, well, do I want this extra 5 enlightenment that I could upgrade to get 10 enlightenment to help, you know, my campaign win condition faster? Or do I get the money building? Because the money building is pretty reasonable too. You know, I could get 300 income a turn. And that's really important because everybody hates you. You're pretty much going to be at war with almost everyone. So you're going to need a lot of generals to deal with all of this backdooring. Like right now I'm getting backdoored from 4 different angles. Like, I've got my one general here. Someone's running around this way. One faction's backdooring. Another one's coming in this way, backdooring. Another one's coming up this way. And another one's coming from the south. I'm literally surrounded on 4 corners right now by people that refuse to fight me that will just backdoor me. So I had to hire this guy. He's still on the weak side. But you're going to need a lot of armies, is what I'm saying. And so it's like, yeah, you do want the win condition, but at the same time, you want the money. And at the same time, to stop backdooring, sometimes you need a military building there too with garrison, right? And so there's a lot of tension there. It's like, do I go greedy and go for the win condition? Do I go for the money so I can get more armor or armies? Or do I go for a garrison to help me out a little bit? The garrison upgrade still won't help you against like a very large army that's coming at you. But it will delay them for a while. It'll make sure that a little 6 stack probably won't beat you, and that a 12 stack will take longer, and an 18 stack will be delayed by at least a few turns while they get some siege equipment. So that is useful. Now you can put some of these administrators in here, and some of them can have garrisons as well. So if you power up, you know, their army and then place them in a town and just have them sit there with their retinue, then they can help you defend as well some key spots. But it still is kind of weird because once you appoint as governor, you can't ever take them out of governor or they get really unhappy about it. So you can't put your really good general in there to help out, but or at least a decent general. Like anyone that you want to put on the field, you can't make them a governor. So usually it's kind of like really weak type of lords, are just lords that nobody likes, that nobody wants to play with, that you put in there. But anyways, there is real strategic tension there, and I think that's cool. Okay. Went over that stuff. Yeah, clear identity, tech advancement, much better balance of classes. We talked about that. Much better replenishment. We talked about that. Let's talk about this tech tree a little bit more. Now, I think that this is pretty cool. So you start off at your level 1. Before you level up, you can grab these techs. They start off taking about 5 turns each, 4 or 5 turns each. And once you level up to the next level, you know, in your on your way to Enlightenment, you can get this, and the next level is this, next level, next level. So it's pretty cool that it goes up, and then it feels a little more linear instead of that tree. The tree looks cool, but I talked about all the time, it just doesn't feel like you're making a lot of progression in the tree. It feels like you need to jump back and go into multiple trees to kind of cherry pick cool things that you want, and it just doesn't feel like you're moving up, and that you're rewarded for going wide, for going diverse as much, right? Like, it feels like you just really want to put all your points in one tree so you can get as far as possible, because it costs the same amount of research to get any tech, as far as I can tell. So the tech requirements might go up as you level up your main person, but once again, I'm not sure, because I was doing Legendary on Bandit Queen, and the tech was just, like, our faction advancement was just crawling. But this feels actually really cool. Like, every time you move up, it feels like there's stuff that I'm looking forward to. It's cool. It's like, okay, you get to tier 3, you can start to get some more elite units, which is nice. You can get these archery masters. You can get these, like, really good heavy swords if you want them. You can get the halberds if you want them. You can start getting some upgraded buildings. I don't think those are that great most of the time, but there are some cool things in here, like extra 10% income from all sources, trebuchets, redeployment costs. You know, there's some pretty handy stuff in there. And, like, every time you move up, it's, like, a pretty good mix of, you could get a new unit if you want to. Usually there's something about the buildings down at the bottom, and then there's some kind of utility stuff in the middle. So, depending on your game state, your play style, what you're going for, it feels like there's always going to be something good. Now, how this works also is only a certain kind of lord can hire these specialty units. So only scholars here can hire these units that you're going to get. But once again, they're diverse, right? You have kind of an elite sword you can pick up. You have some archers you can pick up. You've got sort of these weird little utility ones here that you can pick up early on. You got some horses and swords, and it's balanced out by some bigger swords and like some ultra dominant like halberd units at the end. So they all have their kind of specialty. You get a hybrid unit, so you get some archers that are also kind of double up as glaive infantry. So yeah, they all have their specialty, but they all have kind of like uses as well. Like, it's worth getting some of their military units, but you can't hire these, for example, as scholars. So there is kind of that tension. Do I really want to buff up, if I've got a bunch of really good healers, do I want to buff those up, or do I really need these elite archers, or do I really need these elite halberds, even though the healers are the most powerful things that I have right now? What do I want to do with that? And so there is this tension between, like, the generals that you have, the units that you want, and the kind of upgrades that you want. Now, you can get these upgrades no matter what, which is pretty cool. So even if you're not even fielding any scholars, you can still get the satisfaction and morale update, no problem. So I think that's pretty cool that as you, like, level up, then it just feels like each one of these feels kind of modular. Like, you can just kind of work through it if you want. Then you can also specialize to help out your very specific generals as you go through. So, like, those specialty units, and there's other stuff like gives a lot of happiness to, like, this would give 8 happiness to scholars and unlock a special assignment for them. So I think that it's a lot better done. It's very well balanced between being modular and being sort of very specific, very focused on a certain playstyle or a certain kind of general. And it's good to go back and revisit some of these too, because they also give Enlightenment. So, like, right here, there's even tension right now, even later in the game with my 250% research rate. You know, I want to go up here and get this, you know, like, unlock these cool court positions, but sometimes I just want to level up to the next tier also. Because this only gives me 30 Enlightenment for 8 turns, but if I go down here, this will give me 10 for 2 turns. So this is far, far more efficient to get if I'm just going for the flat win condition. So I have found myself coming back and picking up stuff that I didn't get earlier, like I didn't get Confiscate Belongings until, like, tier 2 or tier 3, because I really wanted that quick boost in 10 Enlightenment to reach a certain breakpoint. So, you know, there's even this tension between going back and getting these because they're much more efficient for the Enlightenment. So there's just all kinds of really cool strategic choices here that I really like about that tech tree. And the better balance between units, I mentioned that before, people can fight, but even certain units in different armies can fight really well. Like, these are awesome. These Bringers of Righteousness, they're expensive, but they're very good because they have pretty decent armor for archers. You know, 45 armor is good. I think I've got some upgrades on them, but a lot of health, good armor. They're actually pretty good in combat. I mean, they swing about, you know, 29 times a minute, so they're pretty fast, and they have a good balance of normal damage and armor piercing. So these are like your really good, tough hybrid units. But, you know, these Men of the Forest are really strong as well. You can get them at tier 1. They're also hybrid. They are bows, but they also have axes. So they don't do quite as much damage as the other guys, but they're a lot cheaper, and they attack really fast. Now, these are level 10, but look at this. 60 attacks in a minute. As archers, they fire 60 shots in a minute at level 10 with all these different upgrades that I have. So that's pretty nutty. They have 36 ammo. So these aren't going to be as good as like the Masters of Archery or whatever, but they're pretty dang good, and they're not going to be as good in melee as, you know, kind of a more elite unit, but they're good. So I like the hybrid units. I think they're cool, but you can only get these with Gongdu. So you know, if you want your other types of, or not Gongdu, but the veterans. So that's why I had a lot of veterans, because I wanted a lot of these Men of the Forest early, but they're good. But then later on, like I said, it just kind of scales up to where the different generals are good at different points in the game. So now in this mid-game where I have a bit more money, then I can start getting more of these Bringers of Righteousness, and that's really cool. And then in the late game, you know, maybe 20 turns from now, I can start leveling up the Scholars and getting those Ultra Archers. So I think there's a lot better balance there. Good assignment options, mentioned that. Feels good. Okay, so that's all the cool stuff. So I really have enjoyed this. I've been, you know, addicted to this game over the last week or so. I've been playing a ton. This is much, much better. It's much more fun overall. There are still a couple of things that that I mentioned in the first video that I'll just go ahead and mention here again really quick. How long is this? Okay, not too long. This will be a bit of a quicker one. Oops, let me bring up the sheet here. Sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth. Okay, so big towns, still not worth. So that's something that I still hold on to most of the time. Unless you have a port that's also going to give you some extra food, it's just not worth it to go to the big towns because they just start costing too much food. Like, that's the big thing. And they start causing public order problems. The population still does not matter. I have not even considered population once in this campaign on Legendary. It just does not matter whatsoever unless you're doing a Netflix campaign that I mentioned before. If you're just sitting in your town and you're just playing politics with everybody and you're just, you know, waiting a million turns to level up all of your food buildings, and, you know, you're waiting a million turns to level up your fishery and all of that kind of stuff, then yeah, maybe you can afford to, you know, bring this all the way up to tier 10 if you want to, right? It's going to cost you 46 extra food to do it, but it's not efficient. Like, as far as I can tell, you know, and especially with an aggressive faction. Now, maybe if you're playing Cow and, you know, you're just trying to play politics with everybody, you know, doing that type of campaign, once again, that could be very fun. You know, I could potentially like doing that. As a content creator, I just don't want to sit there and do politics all campaign. I don't mind doing some, and we do plenty in this campaign, but anyways, I think unless you're going for a very, like, turtle, ultra-passive style of play, it's just not going to be worth it to level these up. Like, you do get some extra slots, but really, all that you need, you know, you can get some multiplicative money buildings, right? Like, you can get this. It gives you, you know, 30% extra trade, extra percentage income from commerce, and then, you know, level up this and get some more commerce income and stuff like that. Like, you can do that, but once again, it costs you a bunch of money. It's more viable to do that with something like Yellow Turbans here, and probably some of the other factions that are designed to do that. But I still think, by and large, if you're playing an aggressive campaign, it's just not going to be worth it to level these up. So most of the time, you just want to stop at level 4, and you just get your food building, often an Enlightenment building, and then the choice usually is that third slot. Do you want another Enlightenment building, or do you want protection from an extra garrison, or do you want money? Is usually what it comes down to. So I still think that the food and the population doesn't really matter that much. Like here, You know, you can get some extra peasantry income if you want, extra bonus replenishment. So yeah, there's not much replenishment there. Now, you could get bonuses to the construction, so maybe if they're like ultra populated towns, I'm not even sure what my biggest, does it say what the pop is here? Yeah. Okay, so that's a really high pop town, but like, so I mean, you can't, yeah, you can build up your towns. It will take a little bit less turns. So I guess if you like ultra pop up those populations a lot, you know, maybe you could get up here, maybe you could get that population up, get some higher peasantry income. You know, this does give some peasantry income, but it only can go up to, I guess it can go to 350% peasantry income. Maybe it's worth. Maybe it's worth. You better make sure they're not coming to sack it, though. So with Bandit Queen, not as much, but these are a little bit cheaper. You can level them up a little bit faster. But I just don't know how you get the food. If you have a huge surplus, I do have 15 surplus in food. So maybe, I mean, it's possible. There's a strategy where you can power level this stuff up a little bit more and get more money off of it by leveling it up. To be fair, I have not power leveled one of these. I just saw the price tag on it. That much food, that much money. It's going to take 1,000,000 years, you know, to get all that stuff. I'd rather just have a bigger army and, you know, just go take over the world. But maybe, like, at this point in the campaign where you're starting to get more resources, you're starting to snowball, maybe you can level that stuff up and start to get a bit more money if you can get the excess food. Now, keep in mind, you can trade this food too, and some factions will pay a lot for this food payment. So that is not trivial, you know, and that's a question you definitely have to ask yourself if you're going to do this strategy. Do I really want to pay 46 food for this? Yes, I get some extra money from commerce, but it's going to cost all this money to get up here. And I'm going to have like huge population growth to support it. I think you start to get public order problems if your population gets really big too, so then you have to level public order buildings, and you can get extra commerce and stuff like that. You know, maybe if you have like a lot of silk or some other, you know, buildings that give you a lot of commerce and stuff like that, like I could see it possibly being good. But remember, 46 food, if you traded that to other people, you can get a lot of extra money per turn. So like I'm trading some food right now. It's not saying what I'm giving it away for, but usually you can get at least like 200 gold for one food a lot of times over 10 turns. So I don't know. The trade, depending on how strong your trade is too, you might be able to get better balance for that. So I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it. I don't think it's automatically that's going to be the best situation to level everything up to 5. So my instinct is it's probably not going to be worth. You're better off spending your resources elsewhere, unless you're just completely rolling in a lot of food. But then if you are rolling in food, you're going to have to leech all of that food from other towns, because there's no way you're supporting 46 food on one town. So like all of your other towns, you're going to have to pull in food from them. And if you do that, that means they can't support themselves at tier 4 or tier 5. And so it's like, would I rather have, you know, 20 commanderies that are all tier 4, where I can, you know, get these tier 3 or tier 4 enlightenment buildings in them, get the extra research, progress my, you know, campaign faster, get the extra enlightenment, get all the extra property and control it? Is it better to do that, or is it better to use 46 food to level this up? Right, like that's 46 commanderies worth of food. Like a tier 4 town only eats 2 food, I guess. So it's 23 commanderies worth of food in one town. It's like, is that stronger than 23 other towns I could get? I don't know about that. My instinct is probably not. So I don't know. I know there's going to be some people that are like, but if you build the super awesome level 10 town, you get so many building slots. You get 6 building slots, and you can get this huge population, and you can get, you know, 500% commerce. And it's like, maybe, man, maybe, but I still think that stopping around tier 4, maybe tier 5, if you have extra food already there with a fishing port. And I say tier 5 because that's the cutoff to give you one more building slot. I don't think you get another one until tier 7, which costs way, way more food. So tier 5, if you have the fishing port, I think is legit. But everything else, I'd still go tier 4. So once again, could be wrong about that. Depends on your playstyle. If you're going for a heavy diplomatic thing. But to me, it feels like it gets super inefficient later on, which is fine. That's fine, but that is something to keep in mind. You don't have some of the features in other factions, so you don't have a family tree or anything, which I'm okay with that. I didn't even really like the family tree, as far as I could tell, just did not matter at all. I mean, maybe if like your husband and wife go into battle together, maybe they gain some bonuses or something. I'm not really sure. But it just felt very inconsequential, so that didn't matter. There's no spies, as far as I can tell. I mean, I don't see anything here that says it gives me spies. And, you know, I've almost completed most of this stuff. So, I don't know. I don't think you have spies with this, so maybe we'll revisit another campaign. If people want to see me try to do a more diplomatic campaign, you know, I can play something like Cow Cow or... the Shao, I can't remember his name, the dude that starts over here that gets the extra like discount on like the little armies. I think he could be really strong, especially in the early game. But anyways, if someone wants to see that style of play, I could do that, but there's no spies in this this campaign. I don't, at least as far as I can tell. Very limited diplomacy. Almost everybody hates you throughout the entire game. Most factions will be at war with you. The only people that like you are the other Yellow Turbans, but you can't confederate with them or anything, at least not early on. All I can do is go to war with him if I wanted to. And, like, you have this thing where you can go up and annex Yellow Turbans, where you just, like, walk up and take their town. But I was only able to do that one time in the campaign at the very start. Like, you start right here, and I came up and took that, and that's it. And then every other time, they were just killed off by the other factions for the most part. So, yeah, everybody hates you. There are no spy options. There are virtually no diplomatic options with anybody. So, like, here... Like, we can't vassalize. We can't really do alliances. It's harder to do that. I think I was in an alliance with one other Yellow Turban at some point. We never did anything. I just joined their coalition. They're on the other side of the map. Didn't matter. So, yeah, I can't do any of this stuff, at least as far as I can tell so far in the campaign. Can't do that. Can't do this. Very, very limited diplomatic treaties. So, if you like diplomacy a lot, it's not gonna be as good with the Yellow Turbans, but the ancillaries, like, you can still sell off, and I did this a lot. You can sell off a bunch of followers, accessories, mounts, armors, weapons, all that stuff. Because I'm so aggressive, we're just constantly fighting, taking stuff, winning a lot of hard battles. We come back with a lot of loot, and so that's one thing that I really do like about this game over some of the other Total Wars, is that you can sell those excess followers at a reasonable price. I don't think it's too exploitative. I mean, I have probably made like 20 or 30,000 gold off of that over like 100 turns. But it is an extra resource that you can get, which is nice. But yeah, very limited diplomacy. And this court system, really, it just does not matter that much. Like, okay, 15% income from peasantry faction-wide. That's pretty cool. You know, 20 Enlightenment's good. Extra population growth. Extra replenishment. That's actually really nice. That's actually really nice for when we follow her around. But there's only 3 slots of that. And then this, like, this local thing, it's like, you can put them in the local area, but the problem is, like, I've found a lot of times I need to actually take them out of that area to serve as generals. So, like, you have to carefully plan and just think, okay, this person is going to sit here, like, forever in this town, because if they ever leave, they lose 20 satisfaction. But then you have people that long for a higher office. You know, they start getting unsatisfied because they don't have a higher office. And so you want to put your best generals, and usually it's the people who are high-level generals, you want to put them in high offices so that they're happy. But if they're serving on the battlefield, then they don't want to be sitting in a town not doing anything either, or you don't want them to do that. Because they're powerful, they have a lot of skills, they have a lot of power. So I think that, that is, that's kind of the tension. So right now, all of my local leaders that should be sitting in towns are all out fighting. Pretty much. And I could put another local leader here, but I just don't even need it in a lot of places right now. But yeah, with this, you get 30% corruption. Now, that's only if you're sitting there. I believe. I've looked, like, for example, let me show you here. Okay, I think I want to look at, this town right here. There we go. I was blanking out for a second. So this has a guy here, Raoul Ling. Okay, so this is the appoint administrator, right? So he has to stay here. He's one of my better generals out there right now. Kind of middle of the line, but anyways, I need him in an army. So it should be 30% corruption down, right? But if we look here, minus 12% because of corruption. So it does not look like, unless my overall corruption in my whole faction is 42% and he's lowering it by 30. But I don't think that's true. Let's see. So if we look here, 7% corruption. But I think that's because I have someone on assignment here, or she's actually standing in this area. One of these guys are, and they lower corruption, I think. But if you look over here, like 20% corruption over here. So, in other words, like, it's not reducing it by 30 in that one place. I'm pretty sure it is not reducing it by 30. That one might actually be a little bit more corrupt because it's a higher building. It's not entirely clear where all that corruption comes from. See, this one's getting 20%. So I think the standard is usually about 20%. And it says that in most places. Now it's 12%. It says it should be 30% less for that position. So to me, that tells me that they don't get the bonus unless they're actually sitting there in that town as, like, part of that commandery or whatever. So really, you get the extra army. That's nice. But you have to sit there to get the bonuses. And so I just end up giving these positions to my high-level generals or, like, higher-level generals a lot of the time, just so that they aren't mad at me. Pretty much. And I have so many army capacity right now that, like, that just feels like that's never a problem. Like, I only have 5 armies. So, like, getting the extra army is nice, but I can barely afford 5 armies, and I own probably, like, a fifth of the map right now. Maybe. Maybe not that much, but anyways, I own a lot of stuff, and I'm not even using half of my available army. So, anyways, the court system's cool, but it doesn't matter that much. I still feel like I liked Attila's court system way more. There was a lot more intrigue, a lot more, like, micromanagement that you needed to do with that, which was pretty cool. One thing I will say with this faction is sometimes you do have to go through and micromanage everybody, like all of these generals. Like, that's so many characters, it's ridiculous. But you do want to go through and just, like, every turn it feels like I have to just kind of flip through and see if anyone randomly leveled up while they were on assignment. Like this guy. He's just sitting there chilling somewhere random. I don't even know where he is because there's, like, so many people. But I want to level him up because sometimes you can get stuff like this, extra research rate, and every time you level them up, you get 2 extra enlightenment. So you do want to make sure you're leveling them up as fast as possible. Now, one nice thing also, and I'll kind of end on this because I don't want this to be too terribly long. Yeah, he's doing healing rituals right now, so that's how he's leveled up because he's on assignment. Is that a lot of these guys do not charge anything while they chill. So their cost, if we look at details here, cost is 0, minus 100% character salary. So while their title rank is follower, then they're only they're free. And then as they level up more, then they get some extra perks and they start charging you a little bit more. But even, like, some of the really high level people, so if we look at faction leader here, I don't know if he even levels up. Yeah, he's enlightened student, so he's not Xion or whatever yet. but he's still getting minus 25% on his salary, so he's still not charging much. I think 732 is for his entire thing, for his entire retinue. So that makes them a lot more affordable, so you can have 1 million of them around, which is really, really nice, so that you can do a lot of assignments, and you have a lot of armies that you can put out there. Whereas with other factions, it gets a lot more expensive. Characters are asking for at least 100 or 200 gold a pop. I mean, I don't even know how many are here. There's like 20 or something, right? And if all of them are asking for even 100, you know, I'd be 2,000 gold in the hole right now. I'd have to get rid of some armies probably. So that is really nice that you can go wide with them. And just thematically, the final note here, I just think it's really sweet that it's like a bunch of humanities people that are running around kicking butt, taking over the world. I think it's awesome. You've got your scholars, your healers, and then you've got your veterans as well. And just a lot of their skills is just themed around reaching enlightenment, kind of this higher level thinking and expressing compassion and sort of love for the people and things like that. So I think that's really cool, you know, as someone who teaches English at a major American university. That puts a smile on my face. I like to see it. I like to imagine, you know, these great, you know, warrior poets getting out there, getting into the fight. You know, your Byrons out there, for those of you that know 19th century British literature. And there were a lot of writers have been soldiers over time. You know, think of like Hemingway. There's a lot of people that have done that. So I think that's pretty cool thematically. So anyways, I do like the Yellow Turbans a lot more. I would probably give this, you know, the base review that I gave the game, primarily informed by the Bandit Queen. I think I gave it like a 4. It was okay. It was probably worth playing, but it had a lot of balancing problems. But I think the Yellow Turbans, I think this is actually pretty cool. I think it's pretty fun. I would probably give this like an 8. Maybe even a 9. I think this is pretty good. So I think there's stuff that they could work on, but I think there is some balance there, like maybe being able, like, getting rewarded more if you level up your city more, like maybe it could give more money or something. Like, there's some stuff that could be a bit better. There could be a bit more diversity in units, although I do think they have quite a few diverse units that are cool. Like, they've got some hybrid units that aren't complete trash. Like, the Bandit Queen's purple axes are terrible for their cost. They're just not worth it at all. But things like these Men of the Forest are really good, and those, the glaive bow units are really good. The Bringers of Righteousness are really cool. So I think that the units are a bit more diverse, are a bit more cool. It would be nice, I mean, I guess like the spies and the diplomacy don't make as much sense with like a rebellion like this. I'll have to try out those mechanics in another campaign, but I do think this is much, much, much better than Bandit Queen and probably many of the normal factions, at least for my style of play. You're being aggressive, you have real strategic choices, you got some interesting unit diversity and some interesting generals and things like that. I think this is far, far better. So yeah, 8 or 9, it's great. I still, you know, it's a lot of fun. Ultimately, would I rather play this for 500 hours or Total War Warhammer? Easily Total War Warhammer. You know, it's way, way more replayable. But I think that going through this, you know, once or twice with a couple of different factions, you know, you will get your money's worth. You will get a lot of time in this game. It will be a lot of fun. It will be interesting. Possibly better than Attila. I really liked Western Roman Empire on Legendary with Attila. I like the challenge, but I think it's probably better than Attila. Kind of in the end game feels more interesting to me rather than just like playing survival against the Hans. You're actually having to seek out some of these kingdoms, these 3 kingdoms here. Now, I haven't played this end game. I don't know how long this is going to take. If this drags on for like another 500 turns or something like that, maybe the pacing's off, but it feels pretty tight so far. Like, first 100 turns, I'm getting hype, like I'm leveling up stuff. I'm almost about to reach kind of Enlightenment here, and then this should trigger kind of the end game scenario stuff. I think a good Total War game, if you're playing through it, you know, I should be able to finish a campaign in 30 or 40 hours, and that should be somewhere around 150 turns, and 150, 200 turns, and I think that there should be like really smooth pacing. I think there should be some interesting mid and late game events that force you to do different tactics that are still posing lots of challenges to you. And so far, this has done this very well. I don't feel like I have a lot of property, but I don't feel like I'm ultra like snowballing it. It does feel like I'm dealing with mostly backdoor right now. which is a really frustrating playstyle to deal with. But it is forcing me to break up and do some smaller, less elite armies, which is making the fights kind of almost artificially interesting, but interesting nevertheless. So, like, for instance, I had to take out Gongdu. He was with my general down here. Like, these were kind of the three amigos that were just crushing everybody. These two plus Gongdu. But I had to break them up to deal with some backdooring. And so now he's off kind of by himself with a more novice healer with him. And then I threw a more novice other dude here. So it is pretty cool that you can break up your armies like that. The retinues if you need to. Break up some of your elite armies and then make a couple more like pretty good armies with some novice generals, and that allows them to level up in an organic way. Whereas in like Warhammer and stuff, if you try to hire new generals like later on in the game, you know, it just kind of sucks. Most of the time you have to go fight like some really weak factions or you're just going to get rolled over. So that is pretty cool that it's more like feels more seamless, like you can integrate new generals into the fold a lot easier with the retinue system. I still don't like how you can't hand off units between, but overall it's still pretty good. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Be sure to watch my other review if you want to see what I think about the Bandit Queen. Once again, that was a little more mixed to negative based on my experience, but I think that this is really fun. It's really cool, so definitely give it a try with Yellow Turbans. I think it improves the game a ton, at least if you're the kind of person that I am and you like good strategic choices and you like to fight a lot and be very aggressive. I think it's going to be cool. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned. I will start releasing episodes of this campaign later on today. It has been really enjoyable. I will say that the sound is a little loud. I didn't realize this early on for like the first 5 episodes of that campaign, so the sound's a little loud relative to my voice, but I do get that fixed after the first 5 episodes or so. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.